Hello and welcome to Channel Hope Podcast, where we share stories each fortnight to inspire and help people channel hope through life's challenges. I'm your host, Rata Campbell. In this episode, we uncover the transformative power of art therapy with my friend and award of Art Therapy Gold Coast. Anna shares how she discovered this field, channeling her lifelong passion for the arts into supporting a range of people facing mental health challenges, social and learning difficulties, with physical disabilities or illness, or those experiencing loss and grief. If you know little to nothing about art therapy, this is well worth a listen. Well, I'm really excited to kickstart this series with a good friend of mine. I want to say we've known each other for about 35 years. So we're going to have a kōrero today. Welcome, Anna.
Thanks, Rada. It's really great to be here. And yeah, isn't it crazy how long we've been friends?
I still think about the day that I first met you, actually, because I had no clue about your artistic abilities. I just remember you being this incredibly loud and very funny individual that I connected with quite quickly. Where did you discover your artistic abilities? What are your skills in this space, Anna?
So basically, as all skills and abilities, they start to sort of develop when you're a child. I just remember being really into watching my nana and my mum. Like my mum was a baker. She sewed with my nana. My nana she was quite good at drawing birds, and she showed me a few things. And with a dad as a carpenter, I've never been one to stick with just one genre. It's been a lot of things that I'm interested in. We had this beautiful neighbor that was a friend of my nana, and she used to make soft toys, and I loved immersing myself into seeing different skill sets in the arts, like anyone creative. Even like I said with cooking, you remember those smells as a child when your aunties and your mum are bottling and making raspberry jam or, doing things all together. And I think I also enjoyed that element of coming together and like a shared experience. So it felt good to be doing those things, and it felt good for me to be drawing or moving my hands in that way. I had a teacher. Do you remember Mr. Smith?
Of course, I remember Mr. Smith. I wasn't a good artist, so I remember him very well.
So I was one of the lucky ones, the privileged ones of him encouraging me. And so that was really great. And then I went on to do fine arts and had some really fantastic lecturers who all were very encouraging. And, without that encouragement, when you're a creative, it's really hard to continue because, and this sort of comes up in my work, you are your biggest critic, and you have got all of those beliefs that you need to work against in terms of allowing yourself just even the space to be free enough to be creative. I don't know, whatever this is, there's a belief out there. I don't know who started it, but it's like, art is for playtime. It's not serious. Nothing can come of being a good artist. That can be something that can kind of play on your mind, in the world of academia and things.
That's so true. And I think it's really sad. In my own way, I've discovered as I've got older that I actually do have quite a creative mindset and a creative way of being. And I think that's why you and I actually connected. There was an element of the things that you did that really intrigued me. And some of the drawing that you can do is, for me, otherworldly. Like, I don't know how people can do portraits, for example, and you're amazing at that. But yeah, expressing that creative side, you're actively discouraged often from even going down that route, and that there's stronger subjects that you could be pursuing. For example, with art therapy, like I didn't even know this was a thing that existed. Tell us about that pathway you took into art therapy and how that came about.
After art school, I still had that sort of mindset. I need to make money. I need to make a career. And so a really great pathway after art school was to become a qualified secondary school teacher. I knew that I just have to have art as a part of my life. Like the creative aspect, it's just in me. It's innate. So I need to somehow make a career out of this. So I went on to teach for, I think it was about 8 years. So I taught in Napier, and then I went to London and taught over there. And a lot of what I was doing were creative interventions. I just had no idea at the time. And I worked at pupil referral units. So these were young people who were not allowed to go back to school, suspended, all sorts of behavioural issues. Probably in hindsight, a lot of trauma in their background, but that wasn't sort of foretold to me at the time. Also, when I was in a high school in London, Northolt High School. It's got a U shape of estate housing around it, and there's a lot of socioeconomic problems in that school. And so the school saw that I was potentially a good person for some of their most troubled students. And what they did was, in order to help the other students learn, especially around exam time when they were doing revision and everything, they put all the other students in a classroom just for me. And I really enjoyed these young people, and, I really enjoyed working with them. They were tough. Um, and
Mm.
so from there, we finished up our time in London, and then we came back to New Zealand. It was a bit quiet. It was a bit hard to get settled. So we bounced to Melbourne. And in Melbourne, I had a teaching job at a really fantastic high school. From there, I ended up being asked to be a student support coordinator, head of student support coordination, working with all the additional needs and sort of funding and things like that. And what I realized is every step of that journey was using art as a way to work with these young people. And again, art interventions that I didn't realize were a thing until a counselor said to me, "Have you thought of art therapy?" And I said, "What is this thing?" And he said, "Well, La Trobe do a master's program of art therapy." And so that's kind of the starting point. And sometimes you just get this like ping, in your heart space, or you just feel it all over your body, like, I'm just
Mm.
so curious and I just so need to go down this path. And that was what finding art therapy was for me.
Amazing. Um, I just know that once you've sort of found that particular connection with the art therapy, you'd found your niche, and that you were able to help a lot of different people through all kinds of different experiences. Can you talk to us about the sorts of clientele that you were dealing with?
Sure. Yeah, there's been a lot. So obviously, was working with young people without realizing, just intuitively supporting them through creative ways. And I think that's a good thing to point out is not all children's brains work the same and operate the same way. And we're so much more accepting of that now in society, but there's still a long way to go, I feel, in terms of really understanding the neurology and aspects to a whole person.
Yes.
So I still am passionate and work with young people. So I work with high risk youth. I'm aligned with a charity at the moment where we're doing some really great work in that space. In terms of physical disabilities, I've worked cerebral palsy. I've worked with lots of people who have had stroke and stroke recovery, brain tumors. Like, there's a lot of things that people choose to work on. And so, for example, a really wonderful thing is for people with cerebral palsy. This client in particular I'm thinking of, they were non-verbal, and a big physio goal for them was to cross the midline of their body. And also their hands was clenched so tightly, it really hurt them
Mm.
because if anyone knows about their condition, the muscles lock up really tightly, and so they're quite uncomfortable. So I said with this person, let's just finger paint. You don't need a paintbrush to be an artist. And so this person would start finger painting, and then all of a sudden, as the session went on, her hands opened up and her mum cried, and she said, "We can't actually get this to happen like on cue." And the fact that she's able to do that, and she was able to make a beautiful, made many expressive art pieces, and that gave her a sense of control, belonging, like, just all of the things. It was just bing, 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 hit, hit, hit. And all we were doing was being creative, playing, and curious.
I really love that example because I guess, like you say, it's about being able to be opened up and access, different parts of
Yeah.
oneself, and it has a physical impact. I think that's really cool.
Yeah. And so we've got, that physical, with people recovering from stroke, there's a deep wisdom in the body and a knowingness. If they want to kind of progress and recover. Some can recover fully, and some can recover close to, and some may not be able to recover. But I do believe it's really a time will tell. I've had a number of clients who have been told they can never use their left arm or leg again, and now they're walking, some are driving, some are drawing. Not one person has not been able to use that limb. And that's really hopeful, I think, for people who are in that situation. It does take time, and I'm not going to obviously diagnose whether people can or can't, but it has been phenomenal to see how motivated and how the art therapy can assist people with those goals. Sometimes, people come in and they can't move the side of their body. And
Yes.
for them, they want people to acknowledge that part of them. Even when they come in and I just hold their hand and I go, hello, good morning. And we're going to say hi to Lefty Lucy here. And, we kind of just have a bit of fun
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
life is very serious for them. But when you feel out of control of your own body, you need to you want to look at ways that you can control your experience, or you can have an enjoyable experience regardless. They're the opportunities I want to create in the art therapy room for my clients, or, for people who want to come and explore that. And often there's a lot of mental health things that can go on,
Yes, yeah.
different stages of life will bring different obstacles.
I think that's interesting too, point to touch on there, because being our age, I don't mind talking openly about it, but we go through times, where depression is a real thing. I know it certainly was for me, around early 30s is where it really kicked in. Do you find that you get a lot of people that in these life stages of mental health coming and looking for this kind of support, or is it something that you think we should probably encourage more?
Yeah, I totally think we should encourage more, because at the moment it feels like for young people, medication is the only option. Exercise is encouraged, but and possibly a diet change, but there's not a lot of mainstream encouragement for the arts. And
Yeah, I was just going to ask, how well do you integrate with mainstream health? Is it an option that is explored willingly by mainstream health providers?
well, I think once they experience the work you do and they see the benefits I've had a great time in a mental health hospital where psychiatrists, psychologists, OTs, dietitians, they've all seen the benefit of art therapy in the patients. And so if it's one of those, if they are there experiencing and they see that, you are very professional in your approach, you've got good boundaries, especially when it comes to mental health, because these people are very vulnerable and you don't want to take advantage of that. And so coming in and just seeing them light up, seeing the shift in affect and the shift in outlook of life. Often, when people have depression, it's not one size fits all. It's a review of what's gone on in our past and what our beliefs are about our future, and it's almost a decompression of all of these things, these beliefs that we've held about ourselves, or the experiences we've had but we haven't had a chance to unpack.
As you know, our son's had a number of, well, not a number of, but he's had one or two major health issues that we've had to deal with. But one that's an ongoing thing is we knew quite early on that he was on the spectrum, on the autism spectrum, and he's also been diagnosed since with ADHD. And we've gone down the medication route to support him, and it's working a-okay. But the whole time, I think I've been wondering about whether we could have looked earlier into something like art therapy. Like, what sort of availability is there of this kind of service, and how does it work? And is there accessibility here in New Zealand as well?
Yeah, so there's definitely art therapists in New Zealand. We need to survive. ACC, I think, can fund art therapy in New Zealand. Otherwise, you would just privately fund yourself in New Zealand, I would imagine. Or there are not-for-profit organisations, maybe they could fund sort of groups and things like that in the community. In terms of Australia, we've got a thing called the NDIS, and we've gone through a very rough patch with NDIS, but they've just come back and said, yes, we're going to keep art therapy. We acknowledge it as being an approved allied health profession, which has been a really great experience, to have that validated. We're still a little bit behind the eight ball in terms of understanding these modalities.
Yes.
That said, in New Zealand, I feel like the Māori culture already had those modalities down pat. And, this was already a part of how we grew up. We've got all the arts, we've got dance, we've got singing, we've got music, we've got visual arts, we've got carving, we've got poetry, like all of these things are all really gateways to healing and repairing.
Yeah, it's true for Māori here in New Zealand, but I think true for Indigenous cultures worldwide, right? And including the Aboriginal, First Nations peoples there in Australia as well.
Yeah. If you go far enough back to any culture, there was always some sort of art aspect. There's a reason for that. It's not just la-di-da.
Mm.
There's an innate kind of need for humans to tell our story, to repair from trauma. You think about times in war, or you think in times of crisis. The arts have actually been, a lot of music comes out of those times. Getting back to how would someone find an art therapist, it would be privately funded. We have Medicare over here, but that only funds things like psychologists and certain allied health professionals. Art therapy is not on that. So NDIS is basically the only way. And I've been fortunate enough to be funded through and contract to a charity organisation, so I can sort of link in with the at-risk youth and support them in our community. Yeah.
Amazing. No, it's deeply valid what you're saying. It once was and should again be intrinsic to how we operate
Mm.
as people in general, not just Indigenous cultures. Yeah, I think it'd be a neat thing if we could continue to evolve and just trust in the power of creativity to actually be a healing process. I mean, I've encountered it. And I've been fortunate enough to know you and what you do and hear all the amazing work that you do in this space. I know you probably can't go much into detail with this, the work that you did in the hospitals with women in particular. Can you talk to us a little bit about the was it the maternity hospitals there in Melbourne?
I had a really great internship or work experience on the antenatal ward. So these women were at risk of losing their babies, and as a mother, I can really sympathize with how that must have been actually quite terrifying at times. So some women were needing to be on bed rest for 3 months, and you can imagine being stuck on a bed and also sitting in that anxiety of not knowing if your child's going to make it or not. And for some, they were being tested constantly, and there was a lot of really traumatic things that were happening for them, where their body was just responding, obviously, to what was happening, and without sort of being too explicit. So these
Yeah.
women were really going through a tough time, and so I'd make up a trolley. And because they couldn't get out of bed, I would just bring a whole lot of goodies on my trolley in terms of art materials. And often it was just sitting with them. Often it was working. So in terms of mental health with art therapy, when we've got anxiety in our body, it's a signal, and it's not our regulated normal baseline, is it? And so how do we get them back to their baseline? How do we encourage their nervous system, the vagal nerve, all of these things to come back to a regulated state, because the body's always trying to search for that. And so for some, it's catching our thoughts and having awareness around what we're thinking, what exactly is going on up there, that is projecting a fear here. The beautiful thing about art therapy is it brings us back to the present moment. And when we're in the present moment, the future doesn't exist and the past doesn't exist. We are here right now. And the idea with that is that we can face anything right here, right now. And I would imagine, Rada, you would have had to really bring yourself with your son into the present moment often, because
Mm-hmm.
that future and that past were just too much, and you'd get swallowed whole.
Yeah,
And
everything you just said resonated so much with me. I think that's been the most major shift I've had to make in my way of being, is to just try and live as much in the present. And that's where the anxiety comes, when you're trying to look too far forward and worrying about the future. I still do it from time to time.
but the reason why is because our brains are hardwired to protect us. And your brain is trying to protect you when it tries to project forward like that. But in fact, it's harming us, and it's robbing us of this now moment. And
Truly.
and it's very limited, because the brain is like a computer. It only is based on what it's known. And so our future could look very different if we allow that space for it to open up. And it's tricky. I'm the same, when you've got children, especially, I think, when you're a mother, or you've got people that you care for, or you're just that way inclined, you can easily project into the future and try and be that, yeah, you're a protector. If you've got a big protector quality about you and you've got a big heart, it can be very much a trap for those sorts of people.
You've always had a different quality, a different element that you were never afraid to express, which I think over time I came to appreciate it more and more. And it is hard to stand outside of, everyone else's norm. It's not easy. I really admire what you do and the fact that you've been always quite true to yourself and standing in your own you're quite a spiritual person. And just for context, like we went to been Catholic school all our lives, haven't we, Anna?
Yes.
So we were quite open to the whole idea of, not just religion, but spirituality in general, which I think is quite a nice thing. I think it's opened us up to, different ways of thinking, different ways of being, and accepting that there is much more than just what we see and feel and touch. There's something more going on in here. And I just love that you're able to express that in the work that you do. And it's proven to have results and supports people really well. Just with your experiences, what's some of the things that it's enabled and or challenged you on personally?
Well, how long have we got? I'll try and keep it brief. Growing up with a faith has been important and it has been really foundational for me. Even though I probably wasn't the most model student, quite rebellious in that sort of setting, living in Australia and, reflecting back on our upbringing and things like that, growing up with such a deep culture in the community and around us, we talk about the biopsychosocial and then spiritual model. And so a lot of people drop the spiritual because that's a bit woo-woo sometimes, but it's starting to become more and more accepted, especially when there's trauma recovery and things. What we would call our faith or our spirituality is resourcing. We're using that as a resource to move forward in life and believe that there's hope and things like that. And that's a really important aspect to have. And so the biology, the psychology, the social component, the connection, and then the spiritual, those four elements of a person are what I work with day in and day out.
It's very reminiscent of, Ritapawha, which is the Māori, it's the same principles. I think it's just recognition in your day-to-day thinking and work that the Indigenous ways apply for everybody, work for everyone.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's ancient knowledge for a reason, because it works. And, you can only do so much in terms of reading books. Well, for me anyway, I'm a real, I want to feel it. I want to know it. I want to deep dive into it. And so through this art therapy journey, I did a self-study and I decided if I'm going to work with people, I want to dredge up everything in my subconscious that I haven't looked at. And so we call this shadow working. So basically this whole journey of me being an art therapist has been constantly reviewing and acknowledging those aspects of me that need the healing, because I need to know what my stuff is so I don't put it and bring it to you in your session, And that's just being really responsible and it's also self-care. Yeah, it's just all of those layers of professionalism that you want when you're working with someone and when you're in a vulnerable space. And so I know what it's like to feel vulnerable. I know what it's like to dredge up post-traumatic stress, have intrusive memories pop back up. And so I'm spouting them off in just clinical terms, but they're really deep things. And they've really informed, a lot of how I work or how I understand the depth of where people are going. For example, I've been working also with ex-police and first responders. That's a really tough space. And you can imagine the experiences that they've had in the job are human at the end of the day. It can affect your psyche. It can affect, your everyday, how you are handling that, how you carry that, and whether you've processed that through.
I've met people over the years that have been in those exact roles, and they literally said, it affected me so badly that I just knew I needed to get out and have a complete change. Or for some, they lost compassion in the job. That's a very scary place to be when you lose compassion in a job that's supposed to be completely based on that,
I don't think they ever lost their compassion. They had to
Right.
shut it down. They had to close shop on that because it was just too overwhelming. And so, I would love to see art therapy being utilized for people who are actively in as first responders. We get to work with them and help them process as they go. It just hasn't been acknowledged or understood. There's still this stigma that it's a weakness to seek out help, and sometimes in different institutions it's frowned upon to get mental health support. I'd love to see that change because I feel like it makes it a healthier person. Me working through my own traumas, that's helped me be a really strong, like it's given me amazing grounding and wisdom in that space. And I don't see it as a deficit whatsoever.
100%. And I think you're so right. That's exact people who are out here, going through some of these experiences, perhaps who doesn't know where to go or reach out for something that's a bit more holistic. And I'd love for people to learn more about, what it is that you do. It just offers something not just different, but I believe more holistic, more healthy and healing.
Sure, yeah. Like I said, the body's always wanting to come back to a place of regulated state. And if we're not regulated, we need to look at why that is and what's happening for us. And is it in the brain? Is it in the body? It's probably in both. And we're so multifaceted and multidimensional, really, in terms of the layers of who we are. And I think it's important to say too, art therapy, it's not about creating good pictures or it has to be perfect for a gallery wall. We make marks to get it out of here, and we put it down on paper and we look at it objectively, whether it's a stick figure or whether it's just a scribble of colors. Those colors represent something that's going on internally, and that's where the healing can start to happen. And I also do really believe in a team approach as well. I loved working in the hospital where I was alongside psychiatrists and psychologists, and medication has its place, but I
Yes.
just feel we need to be aware of, like, there's a lot of things out there that we can reach for, and sometimes we'll need a bit of this and sometimes we'll need a bit of that. And we need to be held in different ways because we're working on different aspects of healing.
Look, everything you've said, it resonates. I'll be absolutely ecstatic if someone else today has learned a little bit about what you do and what it could potentially do to help someone get through. Life's challenging, man. It's hard.
Yeah, we just need to be able to have a soft place to land, unpack, realize that there's still hope. And, we really are resilient if we get given the opportunity and the space to just breathe and figure things out. I'm really honored to be able to do the work that I do with people. I never take it for granted. It's an honoring of where they're at on their journey, and however that pace is for them is perfect.
Well, thank you, Anna. I just love talking to you anyway. I'm still having flashbacks of us, organising this last week, and it ended up in a 2-hour-long phone call. But that's just how we roll. Thank you so much. We'll catch up again soon.
I've really enjoyed being a part of this. Thank you so much for inviting me.
For more information about today's guest and the topic we discussed, check the description box for this episode. Join us again soon for more extraordinary stories from everyday people, shining the light of hope for others to follow.